for the results that you had seen in this election, looking at the write-ins just for the presidential race, it seemed like it was up quite a bit from the last two presidential elections. I don't know if there is any speculations that you have on why that might be the case, to have about 500 this year around compared to about 200 in the last two presidential years?
I mean, you never really know. It might just be because people were undecided. They didn't like either candidate that was there, so they just decided that instead of voting for, even though we had 10 other presidential candidates on the ballots, they just wanted to write someone in. Because we did see, I mean, we had the goofy, quirky names, but we did see a lot of like Sanders or Rubio or just Pence by himself, so you never know what voters may be thinking, but just speculation is that maybe they didn't like who was on the ballot.
Right, that was another point that I was going to bring up, is that you did see some of the kind of goofy character names or, you know, obvious jokes as a write-in, but you did see a fair amount of serious candidates compared to other years. If that stood out to you, just seeing more of people who had been running but didn't make it past primaries, what would you say?
I think there was a lot more serious candidates. I think every year you're always going to have the off-the-wall Mickey Mouse or Santa names. They're all going to be always listed, but I do think probably this year you did see a lot more actual former candidates, you know, like Bernie Sanders, who ran in the Democratic primary. I think you did see a lot more of those names written in.
And so for the write-in procedure, I know that you had spoken with me before about this, but people writing in the name of their candidate, even if they mean it in a serious way, it really depends how they fill out their ballots as to how it can be counted.
Well, yeah, for one, I mean, you have to make sure you fill in the oval next to the write-in blank box. But then in order for us, a lot of people were writing, you know, yeah, Marco Rubio or just Pence or Bernie Sanders. But just because 100 people or all 500 people wrote Bernie Sanders, he doesn't get 500 votes, because you also have to look at who the vice president is that they wrote in. And you saw Bernie and Hillary, or you know, I mean, that's a different, just if you just wrote Bernie Sanders, that's one vote. Bernie Sanders president, Hillary Clinton vice president, that's a vote. Bernie Sanders president, I think one might have even had Pence or someone vice president, that's a different vote. So that's, even though Bernie was wrote down 3 different times, it's kind of 3 different votes because the vice president's different. We can't lump them all in together. So that's why a lot of times those write-ins for like president they don't amount to being on the canvas of 5%, because Bernie was wrote in, but then the vice president has all these different names wrote in, so each category then is a different vote, because we got to look at who the vice president was.